Hi, this is Guy Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the astonishing ramifications of what Ginny D just explained with Dungeons and Dragons with D&D in a castle about mental illness and what a dungeon master needs to be a great dungeon master and to deliver, right? And to get the job done, right? Really, really fascinating. So, I highly recommend go over to Ginny D's channel and check out her video on D&D in a castle, right? And its title is D&D in a castle and Panic Attack, which is pretty astounding. So it's really interesting. So basically, Ginny D jumps in and she just starts explaining her experience with D&D in a castle. She was invited to do D&D in a castle. Now, I was aware of D&D in a castle, but I wasn't exactly aware of, and I think one of the reasons why I wasn't really aware of it was I knew it cost a crap ton of money, right? And I was right, right? I was like, D&D in a castle? That sounds awesome. I know I'm never going to do that because that's going to be a crap ton of money. It sure isn't, right? So, generally, if you play D&D in a castle, it's played in a real castle in real Europe, with IRL people and IRL dungeon masters, right? And every seat at the table, you're going to spend, with everything included, based on how, extensive your perks are, or how little you're getting. To get there and to play, $4,000 to $8,000 a seat. $4,000 to $8,000 a seat. Okay, all in, like your travel, your, what you're going to eat, where you're going to stay. There's different places to stay within the castle. You're still in the castle, but like some of you in the stable yard, so it's kind of interesting. So Ginny D gets invited. Now, I'm not sure if all DMs are comped like this, but she was fully comped. They were like, hey, come, your job is to run the game, and your stay is completely on us, right? Now, what's interesting though is it actually might have been a situation where maybe she was even paid. I don't know. She didn't clarify that, but I would not be surprised if not only is their trip comped, but some dungeon masters are actually paid in addition to the comp, right? Like, pretty wild. So she goes in and she starts jumping in. She's like, okay, so I was like, am I going to go or not? And then she talked about her agent, and she, I think she has a very, heavy schedule, right? And, but she was like, I wasn't really sure, right? And then she says this incredible line. She says, I was a little worried about it because I have suffered from mental illness my entire life. And I was like, oh, okay. Interesting. It's an interesting thing to share, right? And I was like, okay, what's coming next? You're going to be like, and this is how I was cured, and now my mental illness is gone. That is not what she said. She was like, I have suffered from mental illness all my life, and that's why, and then I decided to go and dungeon master, where every seat at the table costs $4,000 to $8,000 a piece. And I was like, wait, what? Wait a second. Wasn't there be a part where you're like, well, I've suffered from mental illness my entire life, and that means I can't dungeon master? No. She was like, I can dungeon master at the highest level, the absolute highest level. That's right for me. That's what she decided. She was like, I suffered from mental illness my entire life. At no point did she say that's done now, that she's been cured or anything like that. In fact, it's extremely clear from the rest of the video that she was never cured of this and that she's still suffering from mental illness right now. And when she got there, she actually had a very dramatic physical manifestation of her mental illness happen at the event, right? So you're like, so she's saying, hey, I've suffered from mental illness my entire life, and I decided that the best thing for me to do was perform at the second highest level of dungeon mastering. First highest level of dungeon mastering is Critical Role. Let's not pretend, right? D&D in a castle is impressive, but you ain't in front of millions of people, right? Like, it's second. And so she's doing podium level dungeon mastering. This is silver tier, silver medal, silver medal. Gold is Matthew Mercer's table. Silver is D&D in a castle. Copper is my table. Right. So she's doing podium level dungeon master, right? And she's like super clear. She's like, I have suffered from mental illness my entire life. And she doesn't say it, but it's clear from the rest of the story that mental illness is still fully in place and still highly affecting her to the point of significant, right? Absolutely significant, real, dramatic physical manifestations of that mental illness, right? And I was like, wow, okay, so let's talk about this. What's happening here? Did she make the right choice? 100%. Yeah, she made the right choice, right? And so what is the ramifications of what Ginny D is saying, in my humble opinion? Mental stability is not necessary to run Dungeons & Dragons well, to deliver Dungeons & Dragons at the highest, at podium level, like silver medal level. You do not need to be mentally stable. You do not need sound mental health to run Dungeons & Dragons. That is incredible. The implications of what she's saying are incredible, right? Like that if you suffered from mental illness your entire life, right, and never found a cure, you should absolutely feel comfortable doing Dungeons & Dragons at podium level, right? And that people should be willing to pay $4,000 to $8,000 per seat to be at your table. That is an incredible statement. Do I think she's right or wrong? She's 100% right. Why? Because the reality is our mental status, right? When she's saying she's mentally ill, right? I think she's 100% right. I think mental stability and achieving good mental health is absolutely not a prerequisite for DMing well, for dungeon mastering well. I 100% think that the implications, in my humble opinion, of what she's saying, right? She's saying, I am fully aware that I have suffered from mental illness my entire life and that it is not cured, and I am still actively suffering from mental illness, and I believe the value of every single seat at my table is $4,000 to $8,000 for 3 days of Dungeon Master. And I think she is dead on right. You do not need to check the mental health box, this arbitrary mental health box, in order to Dungeon Master well. If you are actively suffering from mental illness, you could be an incredible Dungeon Master. I agree. That is what I think Ginny D is saying, and I absolutely agree with that premise, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. You get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.